British voters tomorrow going to the polls to elect a new Prime Minister and the members of Parliament under the under-fire Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservatives Party, widely expected to lose to the Labour Party, which is led by Keir Starmer. If he loses, Sunak will be the first sitting leader of the country to lose his seat in the country. Let's get more now on what can be expected as voters go to the polls on Thursday. And to help us understand the lay of the land is the former Labour Party Member of Parliament, Lord Peter Haines. Lord Haines, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. Let's start with how the mood in the country is at the moment. How would you describe it?
Pretty fed up. We have a situation where nothing seems to work, where people feel change is desperately needed. And that's one of the reasons, the principal reason why most people expect the Conservatives to lose tomorrow after 14 years in power and Rishi Sunak to be replaced as Prime Minister by the Labour leader, Keir Starmer. And when I say nothing seems to work, everything from the health service, massive waiting lists. It's, of course, a free health service that Britain is renowned for. School budgets are very tight. There are potholes in the road. South Africans will be familiar with those. The railways are not working properly. It has a feel of an end of an era. And I do expect a victory for my party tomorrow and for Keir Starmer to be Prime Minister. But although there's talk of a landslide, and there may well be a big majority, it's hard to be sure because votes haven't been cast yet, a big majority for Labour, I don't expect it to be a landslide share of the vote.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we have a first-past-the-post system, not like South Africa, a fully proportional system where the votes cast are directly proportional to the seats the parties have in Parliament.
I'm painfully aware that I'm talking to a Labour Party member here, but I'm hoping that you will be able to balance things out. This contest, it appears to be between Rishi Sunak and the Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer. But there is someone also in the wings here, Nigel Farage. Where do you put him in the bigger scheme of things?
Well, he's on the far right of British politics. He's a Donald Trump type figure, and he's benefiting from disillusionment, especially amongst Conservative voters in their party. And he appeals to a form of the electorate that Donald Trump does as well, that feels left behind. Their vote, the Reform vote, is strongest in small towns and in rural areas, not in metropolitan areas, not in the big cities. And you're seeing that kind of divide right across the world between the centre parties, if you like, the parties of the centre-left, like the Labour Party, and what was the centre-right of the Conservative Party. They've drifted increasingly to the right in a desperate attempt to see off Nigel Farage's Reform Party. You've seen that centre politics across Europe, with, of course, the French elections recently seeing a triumph for the far-right fascist, semi-fascist party of Marine Le Pen, with all its antecedents, vanquishing the centre party of President Macron. And you're seeing that kind of trend right across the established old democracies of the world. I think there are various reasons for that. Widening inequality, a massive disappointment amongst the middle of society at the lack of opportunity for young people. But then South Africans will be familiar with all of those trends as well.
Indeed. And this election, Lord Haines, it is the first since 2019. And your country at that time, I think it had just come from what was known at that time as the Brexit. And do you get a sense that voters are partly disappointed because of how the Brexit exit was handled? Or do you think the issues are far more complicated than that?
Brexit is certainly a factor in Britain's very poor record of economic growth since 2010. I would say that, wouldn't I? Because I was a member of that government, as a member of the cabinet when we lost power in 2010 to the Conservatives. But they embarked upon a big program of austerity, of pretty savage cuts in public spending. And the chickens have come home to roost now in a way that I described, over a dissatisfaction with the state of the health service and schools and so on. But Brexit in the 2016 referendum, which the Conservatives called and lost, and led to Prime Minister Cameron's resignation and Boris Johnson's ultimate ascent to the leadership of the country. Brexit has been a factor. Johnson delivered that Brexit as a result of the big mandate he got in 2019, with the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn doing the worst we've done since 1935. So it has been a factor, but just one factor in a rising tide of discontent with the state of our public services, and above all, the fact that people are worse off. There's never been a period in modern times where people have actually been worse off at the end of a parliamentary term than they were at the beginning, and even worse off than before that. So I think that in the end, as the American saying is, that the economy is stupid, is very much the driving force here. But Brexit has made the economic situation worse. Everybody agrees with that, even those who supported Brexit. There's a wider issue here, which I think might be of interest to South Africans, in that I've noticed in my regular visits to your country that in which, of course, I spent my childhood as the child of an anti-apartheid family, and took part in the anti-apartheid struggle myself from Britain. I've noticed how Britain's standing in the world has really fallen in recent years. And people can't understand what's happened, how we could have produced Prime Minister Liz Truss, for example, who crashed the economy and I think sealed the Conservatives' fate as well, Rishi Sunak's fate. And there are various reasons why Sunak is going to lose, but Liz Truss is certainly one of them. And it's as if Britain, being the old, reliable international country in the world, has suddenly seemed to lose its head, produced a prime minister like Boris Johnson, then somebody like Liz Truss, and now having very low levels of confidence in the political class. It's symptomatic of wider political turmoil in the democratic world.
Final question to you, Lord Haines, and I want to pick up on the point you've just made about Britain's standing in the world. The polls are suggesting that Keir Starmer is going to win with a landslide. I'd like for you to tell us, what is it that is special about the Labour Party under Keir Starmer and why people are enthused by it? But at the same time, what will a UK government under the Labour Party look like when it comes to foreign policy? And I have in mind here the Middle East conflict. Where does the Labour Party stand as far as the outrage, particularly from countries like South Africa, which says there is genocide that's going on in the Middle East?
Well, on that question, I think you'll get a much better, more progressive foreign policy from a Labour Prime Minister and a Labour government than you've had these last period of Conservative rule, which is really tracked to the far right. So Keir Starmer's made it clear that he condemned absolutely outright the pogrom mounted on October the 7th by Hamas, the killing of over 1,200 innocent Israeli civilians. But at the same time, and therefore Israel's right to defense is something that the Labour leader has expressed his support for. But at the same time, what has Prime Minister Netanyahu has done in Gaza is the right to self-defense is not the right to defend, is not the right to demolish, which is what has been going on in Gaza. And Keir Starmer's condemned that. I think you'll see a much more even-handed policy, which recognizes Israel's right to exist and its right to security from such terrorist attacks, but equally the Palestinians' right to self-determination and to a state of their own. So I think you'll see a return to a much more balanced policy, foreign policy in the Middle East and towards the Israel-Gaza conflict, which could ignite into a regional conflict at any time, especially if Netanyahu invades Lebanon in pursuit of Hezbollah. But broader internationally, I think South Africans should welcome a Keir Starmer-led government, because I think there'll be more sympathy towards Africa, more understanding of Africa's issues, more understanding, because many Labour MPs were either had parents involved in the anti-apartheid struggle or were themselves involved, like I was, although I'm a Labour Lord now. So there's a much greater natural sympathy for Africans in general and South Africans in particular from Labour.
Lord Peter Haines, I want to thank you very much for your time, giving us the lay of the land ahead of the people in the United Kingdom taking to the polls tomorrow. And important to mention that Lord Haines is a member of the Labour Party.